Before I start talking about why I gave this video the title that I give it, I want you to understand and explain where I am coming from. I never played Nioh 1, I have 88 hours into Nioh 2, and I have 90 hours into Nioh 3. The first time I played Nioh 2 was when it released for PC, and the game never clicked with me. It felt weird. Something was off with the game, and also I didn't like that there was little variety into the builds that you could do, the playstyles. There was magic and ninjutsu, but for the most part those felt more like a supportive style or more like supportive abilities than an actual playstyle. So it felt like it was always about melee, about the weapons, similar to Monster Hunter. So I dropped the game. I was like 70% in, but I dropped the game because, like I said, it never really clicked with me. Fast forward some years later and I played Stranger of Paradise, which in my opinion is the best game Team Ninja has done, at the very least the best action RPG they have pushed out. Stranger of Paradise at first was also very difficult for me to adapt to it, but in the end I ended up adapting to Stranger of Paradise, and it's very similar to Nioh except that it doesn't share the whole combo and key pulls, stance switching. All of that is not present in Stranger of Paradise. It has its own caveats, its own mechanics, but one could say that it's a bit simpler than Nioh 2, but only on the mechanical side of things, on the mechanical and the combo side of things, because Stranger of Paradise is actually more deep than Nioh in terms of build variety and character creation, or all of that. Character creation, I mean the way you build your character, not that Stranger of Paradise has actual character creation, because it doesn't have a character creation. Anyway, the point is that Stranger of Paradise is a great action RPG, and the amount of building that you can do in that game is actually pretty insane. Maybe it's not as deep as Path of Exile, but it's very similar. And in Stranger of Paradise there are many playstyles, and the weapons and the classes feel actually different, unlike in Nioh, where yes, the weapon can feel somewhat different, but you're still playing the same playstyle. This is why in Nioh 3 they did the whole samurai and ninja, and samurai basically plays as you would play in Nioh 1 and 2, and ninja is a different playstyle. So Nioh 3 has two different playstyles and Nioh 2 has only one playstyle. Now you can also have different variety in the ways you can build your character, but in the end I feel like Nioh is more focused on the melee side of things. So it ends up feeling very samey, contrary to Stranger of Paradise, where builds and playstyles are very rich. So after Stranger of Paradise, which is, like I said, one of my favorite action RPGs, I was waiting for Nioh 3. I played Nioh 3, I finished the game, and I actually had a lot of fun with Nioh 3. The game, 90% of the game, 90% of Nioh 3 is actually a pretty fun experience. There is a 10% that is very shitty. When you first start Nioh 3, you are faced with this introduction boss that, in my opinion, is a bit overtoned. It's not overly difficult, but is a bit overtoned, especially considering that at that point in the game you don't have most of your tools to deal with the boss, and even when you're playing New Game Plus, that boss is still fairly difficult. Like, it's not super difficult, but even in New Game Plus that boss feels like it's maybe a bit too hard to be facing that boss at the very beginning. Maybe Team Ninja actually lost a few players over that boss. And the issue is that most of the game is not as difficult as that fight. Now, like I said, I am not crying about that fucking boss. So bitch, sit down. Stop your fucking knee-jerk reactions, fucking fanatics. So I started playing with the hammer because in my experience in Nioh 2, the hammer or the axe has always been a reliable weapon that is easy to use, but I got a bit tired of it, of the simplistic mechanics of the axe. Even though it's not really that simplistic, it's mostly that you are using it like that, in a very simplistic way. Because believe it or not, the axe has some depth to it. And this is why I liked about Nioh 3 and probably about Nioh 2, is that the weapons are in depth. They feel like you're playing Monster Hunter, where you're not only learning the fucking choreography of the boss, you are also learning a combat system, unlike in most Souls-like slop garbage, like Where Winds Meet, fucking piece of shit, that it's basically a parry slop. No. Nothing like that. So in Nioh and in Monster Hunter, you have to learn the weapon moveset and you are expected to master the weapon. And that depth is great, in my opinion, in these games. So I moved on to the Cestus, to the fist weapon, and I basically finished the game using the fists because, in my opinion, that weapon is a lot of fucking fun. I started slow, I started to get used to keep pulsing because when I was playing Nioh 2, I never really understood the purpose of keep pulsing or stance switching, and in Nioh 3 it's very clear why you need to do that or why you're encouraged to do that, because the game never forces you to do any of these things. You can basically play the game as a Souls-like game, and you are going to have a very bad time doing that, but the game allows you to do that. So I don't recommend you, but if you can't master or you can't be bothered to actually engage with the systems of Nioh 3, well, you are probably going to have a hard time like Asmongold. But other than that, what I appreciate of Nioh 3 is the fact that the combat is very fluid. The movement, the character response feels on point. I don't really feel like the combat feels clunky. It feels very responsive. So after a few hours of game time, I started to mastering, or more or less not mastering, but becoming better at the fist weapon, and I started to learn how to combo my moves, how to switch stances while doing combos, how to keep the arts proficiency bar up, how to not drop the arts proficiency, how to mix and match like different moves depending of the situation. So at the end of the game, I felt like I actually learned a combat system, like I actually learned the Cestus, the weapon, the fist weapon. I felt like I passed the exam. Very similar to when you finish Sekiro, that you feel like you actually mastered the combat system. When you finish the fight with Ishin, you feel like you actually learned how to play Sekiro. And when you finish Sekiro, you kind of want to play the game again because you feel good about the fact that you become really good at the game, or not good, but that you learn the game and you want more of the game. Well, Nioh 3 is basically the same. It feels the same. It feels rewarding in that regard. Now, I am going to start with the bad shit about this game. And the problem I had with Nioh 3 is that at certain point in the game, there is a piece of shit boss. There is this friend that his name is Tokugawa Kunimatsu. And let me tell you that this fight, it's very cheap. It's very unfair. And the reason why this fight is very unfair, for example, I am tired of fucking grab attacks. I am sick and tired of fucking grab attacks. There is a reason why I avoid Souls-like slop garbage. I don't like to play Souls-like games because those Souls-like games, the genre is now plagued by fucking fanatics, by fucking losers that have nothing else going into their lives, that they pay too much importance. They give too much importance to a fucking video game, to achievements, quote unquote achievements in finishing a video game, a hard video game. So these fucking losers, they took over the Souls-like genre, and now the Souls-like genre is all about hard as balls difficulty. And the developers, the way they achieve this stupid retarded difficulty is by the use of cheap tactics, and one of those cheap tactics is the stupid grab attacks, delayed attacks. This game also has the audacity to implement a mechanic that is the corrosion of your life, meaning that on certain areas of the game, when you receive damage, your maximum HP is going to be decreased, and the only way to recuperate your HP is by hitting demons or hitting anybody. There is also a medicine that you can use to recuperate your life, but it feels cheap. You're in the middle of a fucking boss and your life is being reduced. Your maximum life is being reduced. It just feels like fucking garbage. There is also an overuse of hyper armor. Man, this fucking trash of hyper armor, I fucking hate that piece of shit. And I get it that some bosses need to have hyper armor because otherwise they will just be punching bags. But there is a case where you just put too much hyper armor in an enemy that it just feels unfun. Also, Nioh games, also Stranger of Paradise had this problem, which is the enemies, the bosses and the enemies do extreme amounts of damage. It just feels pretty shitty that you are supposedly wearing heavy armor and you are still being 2-shotted or 3-shotted. It just feels like your armor doesn't even matter. And this is why I don't like Souls-like slop garbage, because one of the characteristics of Souls-like slop garbage is that the armor usually doesn't really matter. It doesn't really protect you. In Elden Ring, for example, or in any Souls-like game, the real defense, the real protection comes from your iframes or your shield, and that's it. Your armor, the passive armor, essentially becomes quite useless. Another beauty is the inconsistent hitboxes. You also know that these games love to make bosses spam attacks and areas and shit everywhere. There is also in Nioh games the lightning damage. Lightning damage in these games causes a status effect, which is shock, and when you're shocked, what happens is that you start moving really slowly and every action that you do is really damn slow, and the hardest bosses in the game usually have access to shock, which feels pretty cheap. Now in Nioh 3 they implemented the deflect mechanic, which in my opinion feels really good, feels almost as precise as the Sekiro parry, but I still believe the Sekiro parry is better and actually is more forgiving than this deflect in Nioh 3. Feels good enough, but I feel like they balanced most of the fight are balanced around parrying or deflecting, so at some point you are going to need to use it, especially if you are using samurai style. There's also the cheap elemental damage, and I say cheap because there is no cheap elemental damage. It's a shit ton of elemental damage that goes through your fucking guard. It's really infuriating that you are guarding and you're still getting a shit ton of damage through your guard. This is one of the things that I disliked about Elden Ring, and I dislike of Souls-like slop garbage. The fact that there is damage that can go through your fucking shield. It feels fucking cheap. And there is also a overabundance and an overuse of enemies that attack you from a ranged position. Here you are fighting 2 to 3 guys on melee and all of a sudden you start getting shot. It feels like fucking shit. There is an overabundance of cheap, artificially difficult, ranged attackers everywhere. It feels fucking trash. So going back to Tokugawa Kunimatsu, the problem with this boss, this is the worst fucking boss in the entire fucking game. There is no other boss as hard as this motherfucker. The problem with this boss is that he has hyper armor on fucking everything. Now, there are points in the fight where he drops the hyper armor, and those are the times you're supposed to attack him, which, guess what, turns the fight into a fucking Dark Souls fight instead of a Nioh fight. You see, for like 90% of the game, you're playing Nioh in a way that you're doing massive amount of combos. You're doing these huge strings of combos, even to the bosses. And here comes this motherfucker that is immune to this. It's absurd because all of a sudden you're forced to change your playstyle. The game has been teaching you a combat style, and all of a sudden that combat style is useless because this stupid boss has hyper armor on every fucking attack he does. He also does a shit ton of fucking damage. It doesn't matter what type of armor you're equipping. He's going to maybe 3-shot you if you're lucky, but if not, he's going to 2-shot you easily. He has elemental damage. And what did I say before about elemental damage? It goes through your fucking guard. And it's not cheap damage. It's actually cheap damage because it's a shit ton of fucking damage and it feels fucking cheap. He also has delayed attacks. One of his main red attacks that he starts doing on a second phase that he has, it's so fucking cheap. It's fucking delayed, he disappears from the fucking scenario, then he rapidly appears and still delays the fucking attack like for 1 second and then he does it. It's very difficult to counter. It's a fucking cheap garbage attack. Now the boss battle will be passable if it will only be the first phase, but the second fucking phase is just fucking on steroids. It's just fucking trash, cheap artificial difficulty on fucking steroids. The second phase, this clown starts spamming elemental attacks all over the fucking arena. So essentially you are being taught this combat style. You are learning this combat style throughout the entire game. You feel good because you start to master the combat, your weapon of choice. You are doing these massive strings of combos. You are beating the bosses, maybe with a bit of difficulty, but you are still doing it. And you're applying everything you have learned into the bosses. But all of a sudden, the game does a 180 and nothing that you have learned works. Nothing works anymore. Now all of a sudden you have to play defensively as if you're playing Elden Ring or as if you're playing the first Dark Souls. You have to be very careful and only attack when the boss allows you to attack, which is fucking garbage. If I wanted to play that fucking choreography bullshit playstyle, I would have boot up Elden Ring or any fucking Dark Souls or any of those fucking Dark Souls clones. But I wanted to play Nioh, which is known for its fucking combos, for its combat style, for allowing the player to have more skill expression. But here you are fighting this fucking clown and you can't do anything but play defensively, do cheap damage, play defensively, do cheap damage, because you actually are the one doing the fucking cheap damage, because you do little to no fucking damage to this clown. And this fucking fight took me hours to beat this fucking clown. Hours. It's very rare for me to take hours to beat a fucking boss. It's very fucking rare. In fact, I don't even remember the last time it happened. Not even Sekiro did this to me. I don't remember the last time I spent hours fighting a stupid boss. I can't even remember. I think the last time I was stuck on a boss this hard was on a post-game boss of a game named The Last Remnant. It is the hardest boss in the game. It's an extra boss that you don't even have to fight. And I was days on that motherfucker. That is the only boss I remember, which was the White Conqueror. I remember the name. That was the last time I was stuck on a boss this hard, and that was years ago. What the fuck is this shit? So this motherfucker needs to be nerfed. And for me, this fight represents everything I dislike in Souls-like slop garbage. There are other few fights in Nioh 3 that are pretty questionable. For example, there is this fight with this Kagetoki, this big Chongos guy that transforms when he goes into the Dark Realm, and that fight feels pretty cheesy, pretty cheap, because the second phase, the phase he enters when he goes into the Yokai Realm, it just feels fucking garbage. It's very difficult to read whatever the fuck that guy is about to do, and obviously they designed that fight like that on purpose. And it feels like, this is why I don't like Souls like slop garbage, because every fucking boss that you face feels like the developer is trying to mess with you. Not that they are trying to make a good game, but more like they are trying to mock the player or trying to abuse the player. Now, there is another fight that is very questionable, which is the Okita Soji fight, followed by that fucking fish with the name Tokugawa Yoshinobu. And those fights will be quote-unquote fine if they will be separate fights, but unfortunately these fights are back-to-back. Now, I already know someone already is having a knee-jerk reaction to this. I know there is a way to fight the Okita Soji boss separately, but unfortunately that information is hidden from the player, so I had to do the fucking fight back-to-back. So excuse me, fucking fanatic, because I am going to talk about my experience, not your fucking experience. And in my experience, I had to fight these motherfuckers back to back. Now, the Okita Soji fight is actually pretty fun, or at the very least for me was pretty fun. It felt fair, a few cheap moves here and there, but most of the fight feels fair. But here comes the stupid motherfucking fish, and that fight is just fucking terrible. The problem with this fight is not that the boss is super hard, but the problem is the hitboxes. You feel like you should be hitting this clown and you're not hitting him. And many times you feel like he shouldn't be hitting you, but he's hitting you. So the hitboxes of this fight are very inconsistent, and this is why these fights back to back feel quite unfair. Now, another part of the game that feels kinda cheap is the part that leads you to the final boss of the game. In this part, you are expected to destroy like 4 crucibles in a row, and the problem I have with this section of the game is the last crucible. You not only have to fight the stupid demons, but you also have to be careful because the Eye of Sauron is about to fucking burn you alive. That part of the game feels again like the developers are just trying to kill you. It feels like the developers are just really trying to mess with you, and I don't like that. I feel fucking abused when a developer does this. I genuinely feel fucking abused. It feels bad. And after that, the final boss of the game. The final boss of the game, it's not that the fight it's impossible, but it shares very similar problems with the Tokugawa Kunimatsu fight. There are tons of hyper armor, elemental attacks that do a shit ton of fucking damage, delayed fucking attacks. This clown also does 2 red attacks back to back, both fucking delayed, constant spam, cheap grab attacks. I just like, it's not as hard as Kunimatsu, but it's possibly the second hardest fight in the game. It's just fucking obnoxious, and the problem is that the fight is quite hard, but not for the right reasons. It's just hard because it feels fucking cheap. Fortunately, those are mostly the bullshit fights, the ones that I mentioned. For the most part, like 90% of the game doesn't feel like this. It's unfortunate because that Tokugawa Kunimatsu fight, it's pretty fucking bad. Like, it's going to drag the score down quite a bit because that fight, no man, it has to be fucking nerfed. It's a piece of fucking shit fight. I never used the ninja style. I really didn't like the whole ninja playstyle. So like I said, I mained the Cestus weapon for most of my playthrough. Like 90% of my playthrough was done with the Cestus as a samurai style. So after all of the bad experiences I just told you, I was quite disappointed with the direction of the game because I expected more from Team Ninja, because Stranger of Paradise has some hard fights, some hard bosses, but I don't believe nothing is as artificially difficult or cheap like on this game. The only problem Stranger of Paradise has is that there is just way too much damage everywhere, but that also is a problem with Nioh games. There is way too much damage. I believe that they should tone down the damage that the player receives. That is one of the complaints that Asmongold made to the game, and I quite agree with that complaint, because Team Ninja for some reason wants the player to die at the very least in 3 hits, and I don't agree with that shit. It's fucking unfun, and this is why this affix life recovery on Amrita game becomes meta, because every build, or mostly every build, requires some form of healing, because the elixirs end up being not enough. So I do believe these games will benefit from lowering the damage to the player. It is way too fucking high. I bet many players don't want to bother with Nioh games or with Team Ninja games because of that. The damage to the player is through the fucking roof. So after I played Nioh 3, and like I said, I was quite disappointed because of the bosses, the few last bosses of the game. It felt like choreography, like slop garbage. So I went ahead and said, you know what, maybe I should finish my Nioh 2 playthrough. And I went and booted up Nioh 2. Big fucking mistake, but actually was also a good thing. Big fucking mistake because holy shit, Nioh 2 is a piece of shit game. What a fucking piece of shit game. I cannot even believe how fucking bad Nioh 2 is. For starters, nothing you have learned in Nioh 3 translates back to Nioh 2, because the Nioh 2 combat is just fucking trash. And you will say, oh, but it's almost the same, you also keep pulse and stun switch. Yes, But the problem is that the Nioh 2 combat is very clumsy, it's very cumbersome, it's slow, it's clunky. It doesn't have this fluidity, this responsiveness of the combat in Nioh 3. And if you think the damage is high in Nioh 3, fuck, you have seen nothing. In Nioh 2, most normal enemies can two-shot you easily, and many times you're going to be one-shot. I just can't believe how fucking bad Nioh 2 is. It's a piece of fucking shit game. And I fucking tried. I tried to understand and to do the same I did to Nioh 3 and get to learn the combat, but it's fucking impossible. It's fucking trash. The combat is just fucking unresponsive and it's just fucking clumsy, and it doesn't even make sense to me, because in Nioh 3 the combat clicks because you need to use arts proficiency, and you keep this buff of arts proficiency by only using one attack at a time, not repeating the same string of attacks. So you get used to pressing one button, then the next button, then another button, then maybe switching stances, and then you have Frost Moon, and Frost Moon makes it so whenever you switch a stance, you also do an attack. So switching stances now become an additional attack, so it makes sense. Switching stances makes sense because you want to keep this arts proficiency buff going. You want to keep your combo going, and it all fits together very perfectly. The Nioh 3 combat is actually fucking amazing, but if you go back to Nioh 2, nothing fucking makes sense. Like, why the fuck would I even bother with stance switching? What's even the fucking point in Nioh 2? There is no Frost Moon, and there is no arts proficiency. So the only reason why stance switching in Nioh exists, it's because there are moves that are locked in on certain stances, and that's it. And that's fucking it. And here's the thing, you can perfectly just sit on any stance to your liking, and you could finish the fucking game in one stance, never actually switching, because there is no point. For example, the axe. If you use the axe high stance, heavy attack, you're fucking set. It's basically the best move of the fucking axe. High stance, heavy attack on the axe is the best move, in my opinion, of the axe. You just use it twice and you're done. And key pulls and basically you're done. The combat in Nioh 2 doesn't really encourage the player to explore this system, because there is no point in doing it other than fucking gloating that you can do it, because other than that, it's fucking useless. There is no point in stance switching. And also, I'm pretty sure there are people that can play Nioh 2 and do these massive combos. I'm pretty sure those people exist, but the reality is that they are not the majority. And the reason why is this combat system fucking sucks. In Nioh 2, the combat system fucking sucks. It's just fucking clunky, it feels unresponsive, and also most of your attacks consume a shit ton of fucking stamina. And obviously you have key pulls for that, but it doesn't feel enough. Unlike in Nioh 3, you don't really feel super starved of ki. In Nioh 2, you can gas out like in 3 moves. I just don't like the combat of Nioh 2. It feels really slow. And here's the problem with Nioh 2. The player in Nioh 2 feels really slow, really clumsy, really clunky, but the fucking bosses and the enemies move really fast. And guess what? They have fucking hyper armor on fucking everything, and they are super aggressive. So you have a really cheap experience because of that. The player feels really underpowered, and the reason why people are saying that Nioh 3 is easier, it's because finally in Nioh 3 the player gets to be powerful. For once in their fucking lives, in Nioh 3 the player actually feels powerful. Now, some people are going to say, oh, but if you go to New Game Plus and go to the depths and all of that shit, and then you can start being powerful. No, fuck that. Fuck that piece of shit. I want to feel powerful from my first playthrough. I don't want to feel powerful when I finish the game like 5 times. Why do I even care at that point? It's fucking stupid. And this is the problem. Stranger of Paradise had a similar problem, which is why I don't give that game a 10 out of 10, even though I like it a lot, is that on your first cycle of the game, builds don't really come around. You can more or less try to build something, but the tools for building your character really good start to come out like in the final cycle of the game, basically in the end game, and it feels really fucking bad. I feel like you should be able to build your characters sooner, and in Nioh 3 I feel like there is potential to be stronger, but at the very least there is like more options. In Nioh 2, for example, I was battling a fucking boss, I don't remember the fucking name. I saw this armor, I forged this armor that had a shit ton of elemental damage protection when you're guarding. So I thought, oh, this shit is fucking good for that boss. That boss that is doing massive quote-unquote cheap elemental damage, because there is nothing cheap about it. Well, there is cheap because it's fucking cheap. So I built this fucking armor, and the stupid motherfucker boss, it's like I wasn't even wearing the fucking armor. He still dealt a shit ton of fucking elemental damage through my fucking guard, even though I had this armor equipped. Just fucking cheap. And if you search online, you will find out that many people really dislike Nioh 2. And the reason why they dislike it is because Nioh 2 is a great example of a game that abuses the player. It's a cheap, artificially difficult fucking game. And some of that went to Nioh 3. But fortunately, Nioh 3 got rid of mostly of that fucking trash. 90% of the game feels much better than Nioh 2. And I also forgot to say that the level design of Nioh 2 is fucking garbage. You are constantly lost on those fucking labyrinthic fucking level design. Not only the levels feel like fucking mazes, they also look the fucking same. They are boring to look at. They are not remarkable. They look very samey. And I believe this is why they also feel more confusing, because they look pretty much the same everywhere. So it's pretty hard to find your way around these fucking levels sometimes. So here I was thinking that by playing Nioh 2 I was going to hate Nioh 3 even more. Fuck. Nothing more away from the truth. So after playing Nioh 2 and after experiencing the difference from Nioh 3 to Nioh 2, well, Nioh 3 is pretty good, all things considered. I think I judged Nioh 3 too harshly. So all in all, Nioh 3 is actually a pretty good game, and Nioh 2 is a piece of shit game. So I do believe Nioh 3 is actually the best Nioh game. I haven't played Nioh 1, but if Nioh 2 is supposed to be a superior experience of Nioh 1, well, I can only expect Nioh 1 to be even more garbage. Who the fuck knows? But I do believe Team Ninja has learned from their mistake with Nioh 2. They made Nioh 2 too hard, and too hard on purpose, and that's an issue. Fucking psychopaths. And they have learned from that mistake, because a few years later they made Stranger of Paradise, and Stranger of Paradise doesn't really feel that cheap or that artificially difficult. There are some hard fights, true, but I feel the game is fair. It's mostly fair, and the endgame is pretty good. In fact, even Stranger of Paradise was criticized for its hard combat, because it was a hard game supposedly, and it was so bad that they had to even implement a way for bad players to cheese basically one of the difficulties so they could get into the end game without being bothered to actually playing the game. To each their own, but I actually played Stranger of Paradise the way it was meant to be played. I didn't use that cheat that the developers gave to people, that optional cheat, and in my opinion, Stranger of Paradise is a very well crafted game. My only issues with that game is that the game shares this problem that there is way too much damage to the player, and the other problem is that builds come really late into the game. I believe building should be happening sooner. So then they made Wulong and Rise of the Ronin, games that I haven't played, but for what I have seen, they are not overly difficult games. Maybe. Who knows, because I haven't played them. But what I can see is that Team Ninja is actually trying to make their games more approachable, which is a good thing. Usually I would say that is a bad thing, but in this case it's a good thing, because Nioh 2, if you go back and try to play Nioh 2, you will find out why I am saying this. Nioh 2 is an extremely hard game. It's an extremely unfair game, and the problem is that its combat system is actually fucking garbage. It's too slow, it's too clumsy, it's too unresponsive, it's too clunky, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even incentivize the player to try these combos or try to engage in the system in a more deep way. And the problem is that when you have a game with a very hard combat system to learn, and also you have the enemies and the overall difficulty of the game is really high, humans are made to seek the path of least resistance. So they are not going to go and on purpose make their fucking combat or the fucking experience even harder. Why will they do that? So they are never going to engage with your fucking overly complicated, clunky, fucking trash combat system that is supposedly about making combos, but it's too fucking clunky to even try to engage in that when fucking enemies are 3-shotting me or 2-shotting me, most likely 2-shotting me or 1-shotting me through hyper armored moves. Why would I even fucking bother to try to learn your fucking stupid, overly complicated, clunky combat system when the game is already super fucking hard? What I am going to do, and I bet what most players are going to do, is they are just going to use the fucking best move they can and they are going to spam that move. Like I said, high stance, heavy attack on the axe, and that's it. They are never going to engage with your shitty combo system in a combat system that is already feeling really fucking clunky. They are never going to do that, and I think they learned through that experience, and this is why they made Nioh 3 more quote-unquote accessible, but it's not really more accessible. What happens is that in Nioh 3 the player is actually powerful, and making combos and engaging with the system, now it's actually rewarding. Now there is something that you can see there that is beneficial and that is going to help you to make your experience easier. Now there is a reward. Before, back then, there wasn't a fucking reward other than having bragging rights that you are very good at comboing in Nioh 2, and nobody fucking cares, dude. Nobody fucking cares. So like I said, I do believe Team Ninja in fact has evolved their games, and maybe they are in a questionably good path, but that fucking Kunimatsu fight makes me doubt it a bit. Only time will tell. In my opinion, Nioh 3 is an 8.5 out of 10 game. It will be higher only if that stupid Kunimatsu fight didn't even exist. If they nerfed that fucking fight, the game is a 9. But if they don't fucking nerf that fight, that to me is a red flag. For now, I am going to be more cautious about Team Ninja, and maybe it depends what games they push out in the future. Maybe another Stranger of Paradise, but maybe I stop buying their games. Who knows? Because I really dislike Souls-like slop garbage. I don't enjoy that shit. I don't enjoy digital fucking torture. So with that being said, that will be fucking all.